I'm Warren Sharp of Sharp Football Analysis, and hopefully this has become your favorite sports betting podcast. After all, if you like winning money, you've had a lot of success with us. My best bets on the show, 13-4 this season, 76%, 35-13 over the 2 years that I've been doing this show for you guys, giving out free best bets every single show. That's 73% over 2 years. Hard to argue with those results. Great show lined up for you. Friday night, we're going to preview the college football semifinal game between Oregon and Indiana. And then it's all NFL from here on out. We've got Rich Hribar. We've got Joe Gibbs. We're going to be breaking down props, referee angles, and further analysis on every single one of the wild card weekend games. I'm going to be doing some deep dive previews into all of them, sharing some stats and nuggets and things that I think might determine the outcome of these games. So you're not going to want to miss this show all the way through to the end. Before we get into that, we're doing another $100 giveaway. Guess what? Last week's show, nobody guessed that on the Steelers-Ravens game to close out the season, Week 18, Sunday Night Football, that Devontae Walker would score the first touchdown. So nobody wins last week, but we're going to roll it back again with Monday Night Football this week. In the comments below, write who you think is going to score the first touchdown in the Monday night game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Houston Texans. And if you're right, we'll deposit $100 into your Novig account immediately. And guess what? If you don't have a Novig account, click the link in the description below. You can get a purchase match up to $100 when you sign up. So it's $200 potentially that you could win for doing absolutely nothing but opening a Novig account. Hopefully you guys try to take advantage of that offer. With that being said, let's dive right into the show. We got a busy show, a lot of games to get to. Let's go. I am so excited about these wild card games. You cannot believe it. It might not be technically called Super Wild Card Weekend anymore, but this is going to be a super weekend of NFL action. And look, normally I value the divisional round the best because typically those divisional round teams, when we used to have two teams on a bye, and those were like some of the most elite teams. And a lot of these teams that got into the wild card round were pretty terrible teams. I used to really love the divisional round. But I got to tell you, with the extra games this weekend, now that there are 6 games this weekend, and the fact that like the number 1 seeds with only being one bye, and those teams not being like head and shoulders above some of these other teams that are going to be competing this weekend, I actually might think that this weekend is now the best weekend of the year, just with all of the games that are stacked in here and the full slate of games on Sunday, plus the Monday Night Football. So I'm really looking forward to this weekend. We are going to break down the games, but one thing I want to touch on first briefly is strength of schedule. You know, a lot of these teams, they make the postseason in some cases because their opponents got too beat up and injured, or they were able to stay healthy, or they've gone up against an easier schedule. There's a lot of luck that gets baked into all of these teams. I mean, some teams have been great in one-score games. Some teams have been great in turnover luck. And if they don't have those things going their way, they would not be in the position that they are today. And one of those is strength of schedule. And I've got a list here of just looking at the teams and the quarterbacks that they have gone up against, the strength of the passing offenses. And you will see that the New England Patriots play the number 1 easiest schedule of opposing quarterbacks. And after them is the Buffalo Bills, who played the second easiest schedule. And right here, we've got the Chargers and the Broncos and the Packers. We are talking about at the bottom 6 easiest teams against quarterbacks, 5 of them made the postseason. And so we're going to see teams like the Los Angeles Chargers, and we're going to talk about them momentarily in their game against the New England Patriots. You know, the Chargers haven't really gone up against a passing attack and a quarterback like Drake May. But the same is true on the other side of the ball in that particular game, where the Drake May-led Patriots are one of the best passing attacks that the Chargers have faced, and the Justin Herbert-led passing attack is one of the best quarterbacks that this New England Patriots team has faced. The Denver Broncos, they're way down on this list as well. The Denver Broncos have not really played very many high-caliber quarterbacks, so we'll see who they have to go up against in the first round. It'll be one of their first true tests to close out the season. The Buffalo Bills going down to Jacksonville, taking on Trevor Lawrence and that passing attack. The Bills, we'll talk about their schedule. They have not played very many strong quarterbacks. So just something to consider as we're looking at these games, that just some of these teams, they're in the position that they're in part because they really haven't played very many good quarterbacks. Now, that's true for a lot of teams, but just factor that in when you're thinking about these games. I'm fired up for the playoffs, and I know you guys are too. If you're already thinking about matchups and how this postseason is going to play out, there's a contest I've been checking out that makes the playoffs even more fun. Splash Sports is running a $1 million NFL playoff survivor. It's playoff only, so you're only picking 2 teams wildcard weekend, 2 in the divisional round, and then 1 in the conference championships and 1 in the Super Bowl. You can only use each team once, so you have to think ahead. The best part, you can enter from your phone in over 40 states. So if you want to make this a playoffs to remember, check out the $1 million NFL playoff survivor on Splash Sports now. $150 to enter, $1 million guaranteed prizes. Make sure you enter before 4:30 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday when the first game kicks off. Rams-Panthers kicks off wildcard weekend, and I first want to discuss the fact that this is a rematch game. Both the games on Saturday are rematch games. The first one is the rematch between the Panthers and the Rams. The second one is obviously a divisional rematch. These two teams, the Packers and the Bears, have played each other twice already this season. They meet every single season. In the first meeting, obviously we know that the Carolina Panthers pulled off an upset over the LA Rams. The Rams offense was very efficient in that game, 7.4 yards per play in that game. Their 4th highest game for the Rams on the entire season in terms of a yards per play perspective. They only faced 5 third downs the entire game, only 5. They only had 1 penalty the entire game. So they were clean. They played good, solid football. They avoided third downs. They were efficient. They scored a touchdown on 4 of their 5 possessions where they did not have a turnover. So it wasn't like they were being forced into punts by this Panthers defense. They were moving the football. They just had some turnovers. And other than that, what the story of that game really was the fortune of the Carolina Panthers. They scored a touchdown on a pick 6. They got a deflected interception in their own end zone, so they took points off the board from Matthew Stafford once again. They had a strip sack with the Rams in position to attempt a game-tying field goal late in that game. Those 3 singular plays resulted in negative 16 EPA for the Rams, obviously positive 16 EPA for the Panthers. Those were the most significant turnover swing for the Panthers in any game this season and the worst for the Los Angeles Rams. So, I mean, there were some high leverage plays and all of them were going for the Carolina Panthers in the first meeting. In addition, didn't even mention this, Carolina was 3 of 3 on 4th down, 2 of which were touchdowns from outside of the red zone. Their offensive touchdowns in that game were from 33, 35, and 43 yards out. And if you know the Carolina Panthers, like, this is not a high explosive team that's scoring from deep. But in that game, they scored 3 touchdowns. They're only 3 of the game from over 30 yards out. The main key to this game, it's not the key, but something I want you to pay close attention to, is what the desired attack is from Sean McVay and the Rams. They are the better team. They are the superior team. Obviously, the point spread indicates that. But what they do at the highest rate of any team in the NFL is they utilize play action, aka Matthew Stafford under center, turning his back on the defense, going back, sticking the ball into the belly of the running back, pulling it down, and then firing a pass down the field. They utilize under center play action more than any other team in the NFL. What that does, though, is when Matthew Stafford has his back turned to the defense, that allows the defense to change the picture a little bit on him. And that is something that this defensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers loves to do. And he is from this Rams tree. He's coached with Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay previously. And they do a great job of changing their coverages from pre-snap to post-snap. As a result of being so good at that, they've confused teams who like to use a lot of play action, like Sam Darnold and the Seahawks, like Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers, and like Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. Sam Darnold averaged only 5.4 yards per attempt against this Carolina Panthers defense. I know it's Sam Darnold, but his average on the season is vastly higher than 5.4 yards per attempt. Brock Purdy averaged only 6 yards per attempt and threw 3 interceptions. Jordan Love did okay from a yard per attempt, but threw 0 touchdowns and 1 interception. So these teams that like to utilize play action and turn them back on the defense could actually cause more problems than they help the offense. And the whole reason that a guy like Sean McVay and teams in general utilize play action is because it helps the offense more. It makes the defense think that it could be a run play. The linebackers come up and they bite on that. But this Panthers team is actually the best in the NFL against play action. So what the Rams should probably try to do, let me first give another nugget here. The Panthers allowed a league low 5.6 yards per attempt on play action passes. Whereas if you don't use play action against them, they allow 7.8 yards per attempt, which is 4th worst in the NFL. So what Sean McVay should do, if he learned a lesson from the first game, is actually simplify the offense a lot. Don't use under center play action. Just utilize your 11 personnel, drop back. You got Devontae Adams back now. Just drop back and have Matthew Stafford read the defense. Do not use play action. Do not go under center. I know that's a hack that works against a lot of defenses, but against this particular defense and this defense coordinator that knows your system well, you may want to try to simplify things, run the ball at a decent rate, pass the ball from shotgun, no play action, the more standard way that most of the league is utilizing, and save the under center play action for the next round of the playoffs. The nightcap of the first day of the wild card round is the Green Bay Packers traveling to Chicago to take on the Chicago Bears. A rematch, obviously, as these two teams are division rivals. Now, this game features a quarterback making his first playoff start, his playoff debut against a quarterback that has experience. And a great nugget from the Action Network was that quarterbacks with playoff experience playing a quarterback that does not have playoff experience, the quarterbacks with experience are 39-20-1 against the spread and 40 wins to 20 losses since 2002. So a definite advantage to the quarterback who has more experience in this situation. Next year, Caleb Williams will have that experience, but this year it's his first opportunity at playing. Now, the Packers historically have done really well against the Chicago Bears. Aaron Rodgers says, "I own you" to the fans and all that type of stuff. But the team split the series this year. But a couple things to note in the earlier games. Green Bay opened up both matchups with the upper hand. They led at the half 14-3 in the first matchup and 6-0 in the second matchup. They led, even in that second matchup, 16-6 late in the game before the Bears scored 10 points in the final 2 minutes of the game to send the game into overtime. That was an outstanding game, a lot of excitement, primetime game at night. And a lot of people probably remember Caleb Williams having an outstanding comeback. I'll get to more on that in a second. But that second matchup featured Jordan Love for only 26 snaps. He suffered a concussion, was forced out of the game in the second quarter, did not play the rest of the game. Malik Willis had to come in and try to navigate. And of course, he did build that 16-6 lead, which the Bears erased, which gets me to the point on the Chicago Bears, which is you can never really count this team out. The Green Bay Packers are going to have to continue to press, continue to try to keep the ball out of the hands of Caleb Williams late in this game, and continue to try to score, because the Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson-led Chicago Bears just have this knack, especially in 2025, of laying all the chips on the line and just doing whatever it takes late in the game to have success. And you would expect that a coach and a quarterback who have seen that type of success and the ability to come back late in games, especially over this very team, the Green Bay Packers, just a few weeks ago, would not try to overextend Caleb Williams early in this game, would not have Caleb Williams dropping back to pass the ball a ton early in this game. His first game causing mistakes, throwing the football, taking a sack, strip sack, what have you. You can't turn the ball over. The Green Bay Packers do not commit a lot of turnovers themselves, but the Chicago Bears get a lot of takeaways. They do not want to give the Green Bay Packers anything easy early on in this game. And so I'm wondering how aggressive an approach Ben Johnson takes with his quarterback making the playoff debut, knowing that his team can turn it up late if they need to, and they have a lot of success doing that. One other last nugget on this game, and that was high leverage plays that had success for the Green Bay Packers. This has been something they've been good at all season long, but the Chicago Bears have struggled with, which has forced them to come back in these games late. When they played in the regular season, the Green Bay Packers in both games combined were 8 of 12 on third downs in the first game and 6 of 12 on third downs in the second game. That was the game without Jordan Love. The Chicago Bears, much, much worse. The Green Bay Packers totaled, from an EPA perspective, 13.9, almost 14 positive points, expected points added to their team with their performance on third down. The Chicago Bears on third down lost 3.3, a negative 3.3 EPA. So almost a 17 EPA swing, just over, for the Green Bay Packers on third down in the two meetings that these teams have had. The Chicago Bears defensively need to perform a little bit better, but they struggle on third down. Chicago Bears offensively need to perform a little bit better as well. So that's going to be a key to focus on, is third down performance and how does it go, and also how conservatively do the Chicago Bears start out this game. We will get to a more detailed breakdown of the Bills and the Jaguars game later on in the show. So first, I want to jump straight into the Eagles game against the San Francisco 49ers, which is the second game of the day on Sunday. This is a game in Philadelphia where Jalen Hurts has thrived late in the season and into the postseason. In his career, he's 31-5 straight up as a home favorite. He is 13-1 in December or later, and home in the playoffs, he's 5-0. So he has not lost a home game yet in the playoffs when he plays in Philadelphia, a very underrated home field advantage for the Eagles. Kyle Shanahan has struggled against Vic Fangio, who is the defensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. That being said, there haven't been very many of these games that have been recent, but he has struggled when he has gone up against this defense. This defense, if you think about what the San Francisco 49ers like to do offensively, they would like to run the football, but they struggle, especially without Trent Williams. You're going up against a good run defense of the Philadelphia Eagles that are getting healthier along that defensive front. In addition, they like to throw the football to their tight end, George Kittle. The Philadelphia Eagles happen to rank number 1 defending tight ends in the passing game. So you can't necessarily run the ball quite as well as you might want to, and you can't throw the ball to your number 1 tight end target in George Kittle quite as frequently or as effectively as you would want to. That's not really going to build a recipe for success for the San Francisco 49ers offensively. So the key is, what can they do to slow down this Philadelphia Eagles offense? And sometimes this season, it hasn't mattered who has been the defense. The Philadelphia Eagles end up slowing themselves down with Kevin Patullo and the offensive strategy. I mean, this team is such a far cry from what I remember this team to be several years ago. They are 19th in scoring this year. They are outside the top 12 in scoring for the first time since 2020. They ranked 24th in yardage gained this year. In the prior years, they're like 8th and better, 8th, 3rd, 3 out of the last 4 years in Nick Sirianni's first 4 seasons with the team with better offensive coordinators. They averaged 5.1 yards per play on first and second down. That ranked 10th worst in the NFL this year. They faced third downs on 48% of their sets of downs. That was 20th in the league because they're not efficient on early downs, which is, this is the exact opposite of what this team was when they steamrolled to the postseason and lost that game to the Kansas City Chiefs in a great Super Bowl. That was a season, obviously not last year, but the prior Super Bowl, where they were built on aggression and explosion and early down, third down avoidance early in games, building a big lead. Then they would rest their starters in the third quarter, fourth quarter of a lot of their games that season. And this team and this offense, this strategy is anything but that. And we also have to remember that, like, in part, this is because of Jalen Hurts and his desire not to play that same style of football anymore. Jalen Hurts has averaged just 3.3 designed runs per game, his lowest of any year that he's been a starter. From 2021 to 2024, he was at 5.2, 6.7, 5.8, and 6.0 designed runs per game. He's around half of that right now. He's scrambled on a career low 7.6% of dropbacks. They aren't using the tush push nearly as often. And I firmly believe if Jalen Hurts flips a switch like sometimes Patrick Mahomes does, or sometimes Josh Allen does in must-win big games, especially in the postseason, and just says, we're going to run the football this game. I want more design runs baked in. I'm going to be okay with scrambling with football a little bit more. Let's use as many tush pushes as we can. The Philadelphia Eagles will have a much higher ceiling than they do with the current version of the Philadelphia Eagles, which is Jalen Hurts wanting to be a more pocket quarterback, not wanting to run the football down the field as much for fear of injury. The one good thing going for them is that without Fred Warner on the field for the San Francisco 49ers defense, they were allowing a touchdown on 27% of opponent drives. That is 25th in the NFL, the highest of any playoff team. They forced a takeaway on only 9% of opponent possessions over the final 11 weeks. They're down multiple defensive starters. This team is just getting, snake bit on the defensive side of the football, like the 49ers always seem to do. So it should be easy enough for the Philadelphia Eagles. I do think that they're poised to have success in this game, and their defense certainly matches up well with the offense of the San Francisco 49ers, especially without Trent Williams. The question just becomes, what is their strategy going to be? How do they plan to attack? How frequently is Jalen Hurts going to be willing to run with the football to open up that extra door to success and that extra opportunity for them to be able to win this game a lot easier and build the lead a lot quicker and force Brock Purdy to have to abandon the run and just do nothing but drop back and pass the football. So interesting game Sunday afternoon. Sunday Night Football, we've got the Los Angeles Chargers traveling east to take on the New England Patriots in what should be an outstanding game. And you know by now about all the injuries that have occurred along the offensive line of the Los Angeles Chargers, how life has been made a lot more difficult for Justin Herbert. As a result, things have fallen a little bit more on the defense of the Chargers to try to keep opponent scoring in check. And they've done just that, and it's what's helped them win a lot of their games. I mentioned before at the top about the strength of schedule and how they really haven't played that many good quarterbacks. So Drake May is certainly going to be a step up. Some of the same playoff statistics and splits apply to this game, where Drake May is making his first playoff debut against a quarterback that does have playoff experience. That being said, last season in the wild card round, Justin Herbert goes on the road to Houston, loses 12-32. Absolutely boat raced in that game against the Houston Texans. The defense needs to step up here against the New England Patriots. And as I mentioned, they have done that against some weaker offenses. They have allowed more than 20 points in just one of their last 10 games. They have allowed a touchdown on just 18% of opponent drives. That's fifth best in the NFL. They have allowed only 27 yards per drive by opposing offenses. That's sixth best in the NFL. 40% of drives against the Chargers failed to even gain a single first down. That is the best rate in the NFL. One of the keys is going to be how great this Chargers defense has been at preventing explosive plays, and then what that means for the Patriots, because Drake May likes to hunt the explosive pass play. And he's great when he tries to execute on those plays. On throws of 20-plus yards down the field, May has completed 50% of them, which is third best in the NFL. He's thrown a league-high 5 touchdowns on passes that have traveled 30-plus yards down the field. But they're going up against a strength of the Chargers. On throws 10-plus yards downfield, the Chargers allowed just a 41% completion rate. That's the fourth lowest in the league, and a league-best 3.2% touchdown rate. On throws 20 or more yards down the field, the Chargers are allowing just a 27.8% completion rate. That is second lowest in the NFL, and have intercepted 11% of those passes, which is third best in the NFL, aka 1 out of every 10 passes that a quarterback targets 20 yards down the field, the Chargers are intercepting. That is absolutely remarkable. And is a testament to their ability to get a read on what that quarterback is doing through film study and through scheme, and trying to take advantage of that. So it's really going to be a cat or mouse game between Josh McDaniels, the offensive coordinator of the New England Patriots, and Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator of the LA Chargers, as well as Drake May, and the execution there, the plays that they get into, the plays that they might change the line of scrimmage and how he executes down the field. But this is going to be a lot of fun watching these two teams go against it on that side of the ball when the Patriots have the football. Last but not least, to round out the wild card weekend, we've got the Monday night game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Houston Texans. And look, in this game, I think one of the most fascinating aspects to it is just the fact that the Houston Texans are going to be playing outdoors on the road where they struggled at times, going into Pittsburgh. And if you think that Pittsburgh might have an edge, or you think that Pittsburgh might have the opportunity to pull off an upset here, and that's your angle, and they've taken a little bit of money, the line has dropped down from +3.5 down to +3. Some money's coming on the Pittsburgh Steelers by the time of this recording. I got an alternative way to just sprinkle a little bit of pizza money on it if you want to try to make things a little bit more interesting for you. And that is that the Houston Texans generally start games out pretty well. Under DeMeco Ryans, they have played really well early on in games. They tend to have leads at halftime, force the opponent to come back. And as we know, with Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers, they don't necessarily start the fastest team in the NFL. Yes, they got DK Metcalf back, but it was another situation where they were losing at halftime last week, came back, got the ball to start the third quarter, went down, scored a touchdown, tied the game, built a lead, lost the lead, regained the lead, won the game late. You can bet the Houston Texans to lead at halftime, but the Pittsburgh Steelers to win the game for like +800, +900, as opposed to just betting the Pittsburgh Steelers to win the game at like +140 on the money line. Now, obviously, if you're a big bettor, you're not going to be able to get down as much on a prop like that, but it is a fun look for a game like this because of the way that the Steelers struggle early, the Texans have success early. And if you do think the Steelers might have a shot, I'm not suggesting it, but if you do think they do, you might as well, in addition to betting them on the money line, go ahead and take this prop. A variety of sportsbooks offer it. Texans to lead at halftime, Steelers to win the game. You can also sprinkle even less, maybe like coffee money, if you will, on the game to be tied at halftime and the Steelers to win, just in case the Steelers don't have the lead at halftime. You don't want to lose everything if they do come back to win because you put it on the Texans to lead at halftime. That bet pays out like 22-1. So again, just something to sprinkle a little bit of change on, but an interesting way to play it based on how these two teams have played. All right, this is some NFL. We're really looking forward to the wild card round. As you can tell, very excited. A great opportunity to watch all these games. I want to remind all of you guys that when you're watching these NFL games and you're used to watching multiple games on at once, of course, there's only one of these being played at a time. Stick your main TV live. Stick the TV that you normally watch other games on a 3-second delay. Just take your remote, hit pause, let it go for about 3 to 4 seconds, hit play again. Now you've got instant replay the entire game all the way through. You don't have to be at the whim of the TV producer to replay certain times of the game. You can instantly just divert your eyes, mute that second TV, but you can divert your eyes over there and watch every single play throughout the entire game on instant replay. It's a great way to watch one singular game at a time. That's my free advice to you as it relates to the postseason. That being said, let's talk about more postseason, but college football with Ryan McCrystal. We are coming off of our best week betting of the entire season and rolling extremely hot as we enter the playoffs. Since the start of December, my betting recommendations have generated 27.1 units of profit. What that means is a $100 bettor per standard release has won $5,420 since December 1st, averaging over $1,000 of profit per week. When there's fewer games to handicap, my betting recommendations generally get stronger and more accurate. I love the slate of games this week, and I want you in on the action with us over at Sharp Football Analysis. So I'm giving you a special deal to join today. Right now, you can get all of my betting recommendations for the weekend for just $19.99. You heard that right, just $19.99. Go to sharp.football and click the top link to claim this 80% discount. We already have a 1.25 unit bet this weekend. Those have gone a perfect 9-0 this season. Historically, the playoffs are when we are at our best, and over the 19 years of selling my NFL recommendations, I have hit my NFL playoff bets at a 62% rate, 176 wins, 106 losses. This is my favorite time of the year to bet on football, and you will not get a better opportunity to join us. So go to sharp.football today and join for the weekend for just $19.99. Plus, I got to tell you guys this. When you do join this weekend, you have the opportunity to win a 2026 all access package from us for doing absolutely nothing except for being a playoffs subscriber. We are going to run a bonus playoff survivor contest over at Splash Sports only for subscribers to our playoff package. You will receive all my college and NFL recommendations for the 2026 season for free if you are able to win this. You'll get more details once you sign up for a playoff package. So sign up for a playoff package. You'll get details how you can enter, get a chance to enter another survivor contest. And the winner of that, which will only consist of the people that are in our postseason package, the winner of that will get a free 2026 all access throughout the entire season. So you don't want to miss out on that. Now we're joined by our college football betting expert, Ryan McCrystal, who has been on fire throughout the college football playoffs. And unfortunately, when you're in a situation like that where you're rolling pretty hot, you never like to see it come to an end, which is what we're getting to here with playoffs about to end. We're about to crown the second participant for the national championship game with the winner of the game tonight, Ryan, which should be an outstanding game. I know a lot of people are looking forward to this one for a long time. It's a rematch from before. Oregon taking on Indiana. The current spread, as the time that we're recording this, shows Indiana as a 3.5 to 4 point favorite, depending upon where you shop. Most spots have it 3.5. It was at 4 at some points. The public seems to be on Indiana. It may get back up to 4. Obviously, after Indiana just steamrolled Alabama last week, which is what you were predicting as your favorite bet of the week. The total has moved over. The total opened at some spots as low as 46.5, 47. It's now all the way up to 48.5 at some spots, 49. So there's been some over money in the market. I don't know where we're going to go from here, the rest of the action today, but we shall see. Talk to us a little bit about what you like in this game, the matchups on both sides of the football, and how you see the outcome going.
Yeah, right out of the gate, I was surprised by this line. I thought it would be much closer to a pick 'em because of the way that first matchup played out. It was a pretty close game. I think there's two factors that led to the line settling where it did. Number one, obviously Indiana won that game and they ended up winning by 10 points. So if you didn't watch that game closely, you just looked at the box score, you might think Indiana controlled it. But really, that was a one-score game until a couple really late turnovers in the fourth quarter. Indiana was able to pull ahead late in that game. And the second factor, I think, is that the average college football fan probably didn't take Indiana all that seriously until the Rose Bowl when they steamrolled Alabama. But as you said, we were kind of expecting that. Alabama didn't belong on the same field as Indiana. That Alabama team, certainly not one of the 8 best teams in the country, even though they made it to the final 8. You can make a pretty strong argument they didn't even belong in the playoffs, but they had that one good win against Georgia, which really propped up their resume. So they got in, they got a favorable first round matchup. That was an ordinary Alabama team, one of the worst that we've seen in well over a decade. And so what Indiana did to Alabama, for those of us who've been following it closely, not surprising at all. They were clearly the better team in that matchup. But the average fan sees Indiana and Alabama and thinks, oh, like at worst, this is going to be a good game. And then they get by blowing them out. I think the average fan now gives an artificial boost to Indiana. So like you said, the public's on Indiana because they just watched Indiana dismantle, the bluest of blue bloods in Alabama, when really that was not an impressive win. It was just kind of what we expected from a much better team. So right out of the gate, I was leaning Oregon because I thought that line was a little bit inflated. Then as I dug into the numbers more, I did settle on taking the points with Oregon because I think there's really two big factors here, and they both have to do with when Oregon is on offense. The first one is Oregon can run the ball. Again, if you just go back and look at the box score, technically, officially, Oregon averaged 2.7 yards per carry, but there were 6 sacks mixed into that. If you look at what Oregon's running backs did in that game, they averaged 5 yards per attempt against Indiana. A very strong run defense. Oregon really controlled the ball when they leaned into the run game a little bit more early in that game. And perhaps even more importantly, Indiana only contacted Oregon running backs at or behind the line of scrimmage 25% of the time. That was by far the worst performance of Indiana's season. The next lowest early contact rate in the game was 39%. Their season average, which ranked third overall, was 55%. That tells me Oregon really dominated in the trenches in the run game. And I think that Oregon learned something about themselves in that game, because through the rest of the season, they started leaning into the run game a little bit more, specifically leaning into it with heavier formations, using a lot more 12 and 21 personnel to run the ball. I think they sort of figured out, even though they lost that game, that their identity should be with the power run game, because that's where they excelled against Indiana. Perhaps leaned into it more, anticipating the potential for a rematch, either in the Big Ten title game, which obviously didn't happen, but now it is happening in the playoffs. So I think they sort of tweaked their offense specifically for this matchup. And the other factor here is that, they should be able to run the ball even better against Indiana, because they're down two of their best defensive linemen, which leads me to my next point here. That's Indiana's pass rush has really taken a big hit. They will be without Kellen Wyatt and Stephen Daly, two of their best pass rushers, who in that first matchup combined for 7 pressures and 1.5 sacks. They lost Wyatt earlier in the season. Stephen Daly, who had been a key rotational piece for them on the defensive line, stepped in and was excellent down the stretch for them, but then he was injured in the Big Ten championship game. So they're without two of really they've got 3 key pass rushers, and 2 of them are now gone. And it ultimately didn't matter against Alabama, but when you dig into the numbers a little bit, they were suffering the effects of losing both of those guys. Because although Indiana, Kurt Cignetti has raised the talent level of that roster dramatically over his 2 years there, but they still don't quite have the depth to be able to lose 2 studs on the defensive line and just plug the next guy in. They really suffered. If you look at those numbers again of their pass rush against Alabama, they only pressured Alabama's starting quarterback, Ty Simpson, 21% of the time. Now, later in the game, Austin Mack came in due to Simpson's injury, and he was overmatched, and he held the ball too long and took some pressure late in that game. But their 21% pressure rate generated against Simpson was the lowest rate Indiana has generated against an individual quarterback all season by a wide margin. And it should be noted, Alabama's offensive line isn't even that good. Simpson faced pressure he ranked 60th in pressure rate faced this season. So they were just kind of an ordinary offensive line in terms of pass protection. And this patchwork unit that Indiana has now going up against Alabama in that game didn't do a whole lot of damage. Now they're going up against a much better offensive line in Oregon, a more mobile quarterback in Dante Moore. And as I said, they had 6 sacks in that first matchup. That was a huge factor in the outcome of the game. If they can't pressure Moore at the same rate, and he's not taking those negative plays, I think it's a much different outcome. So for those 2 reasons, I think Oregon's offense performs even better in this matchup. So the fact that they're getting, a little over a field goal in this game makes it pretty easy to take the points here, because I think Oregon's capable of winning this outright.
So let me ask you this. As we start the game, Indiana, in their game last week, they didn't score any points in the first quarter. They ended up scoring 17 in the second quarter. You go back the week before that, or the game before that, when they played Ohio State, they scored 3 points in the first quarter. They scored 3 points in the second quarter. Obviously, that was a lower scoring game, but this team does start out a little bit slowly. At least they have in some of these playoff games, with 3 total points scored in the first quarter. If you are looking to back Oregon here, would you have any desire to play a little bit of first half Oregon in case Indiana makes some adjustments at halftime, comes out a little bit stronger in the second half? Is there a derivative market that you like, or do you just like taking Oregon plus the 3.5 for the full game? Right now, just so you know, the point spread in the first half is 2.5, although you could get it up to 3 at some spots.
Yeah, I think that's a perfectly reasonable. I would say I like them relatively equally. Like you said, Indiana has come out somewhat slow. They haven't played exceptional offense against the best defenses this year. Like, again, that's where they're getting too much credit for that Alabama win, because that's a very ordinary Alabama defense this season. So the fact that they ran up the score on them, it wasn't shocking. They have done that to that type of defense, but they've been, less effective in other matchups. Penn State, another good defense that they struggled with. Iowa, they didn't put up a huge number. Yeah, I don't think that they're going to come out of the gate throwing the ball over the place. It should be a relatively low scoring. So, yeah, if you want to do Oregon in the first half, I think that's a perfectly reasonable way to go also.
All right, excellent. Well, great stuff as always, Ryan. And if you guys want even more analysis about this game, Indiana versus Oregon, you can head on over to Sharp Football Analysis, where Ryan has a really in-depth article that I cannot recommend highly enough for you to check out, with matchup edges and angles and some of the statistics for all of the different teams and players in this game. So head on over to sharpfootballanalysis.com. Check that out. Ryan, only one more game after this one. It's sad to see the 2025 college football season come to a close, but at least we're getting some great games down the stretch here, and I'm really excited about this one tonight. So let's savor it while we can, hopefully win some bets. Good luck, and we'll talk to you next week. I've mentioned many times on the show this season, we've partnered with Novig, America's #1 sports prediction market, to give you an exclusive opportunity to try out their platform. They're offered in many states that sportsbooks are not allowed, including Texas, Florida, Georgia, and more. Right now, you can get a purchase match of up to $100 with code Warren. Just click the Novig link in the description of the show below to get your $100 match when you open a new account. And don't forget, comment below who you think will score the first touchdown in the Texans-Steelers Monday Night Football wild card game for a chance to win an extra $100. All right, one of the best parts of the show, we get to bring in our good friend, our fantasy football guru, Rich Hribar of sharpfootballanalysis.com. You know him. You read his worksheets and his detailed game previews every single week, and he's back for the postseason on the podcast, sharing his best props of the week. And we're going to go ahead and get started with the first game on Sunday, Rich, which is the Buffalo Bills traveling down to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this is I don't want to say a do or die because it's never actually die, but like this is an important game for Josh Allen. He doesn't have to get through Joe Burrow. He doesn't have to get through Patrick Mahomes. He has to figure out a way to make a run here in the playoffs, try to get to that elusive Super Bowl and potentially win it. In order to do that, he's got to go down to Florida and take on Trevor Lawrence, Liam Cohen, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Talk to us a little bit about what you like here on Dalton Kincaid and his longest reception, which is sitting at 17.5 at multiple books, -125. So Kincaid longest over 17.5. What pops this on the list for you?
What pops it initially is if anyone has been here the entire season, this is one we've actually done before.
Yep.
And we've done it at a higher number than this. So when I initially saw this number, I was kind of like taken back. I was like, "Is this what we're opening as?" You know, it says local man now. I'm not going to hit this, but he has at least an 18-yard catch in every game but one this season. No tight end averages more yards per catch with as many receptions as Dalton Kincaid this year. He's at 14. He has a 20-yard reception in 10 of 12 games this year. I believe when we took it earlier in the season, we took it at 19.5. I think it was against the Miami Dolphins, and then he actually had it and left the game. But this line is just way under what he's been regularly hitting. And then when you look at the way this game, how we believe it's going to play out is that the Buffalo Bills are going to be pushed into throwing the football more than usual. Whether that be through game state or just a defensive matchup. Opponents against the Jaguars have thrown the ball 4.4% over expectations. That's the second highest rate in the league. They haven't allowed any running back to rush more than 75 yards in a game against them. We believe that the Bills are going to be pushed through either trying to keep pace with the Jaguars or just through naturally, inherently where the Jaguars are vulnerable on defense, that the Bills are going to have to throw. And if they do have to throw, not only does that open up more opportunities to Kincaid, Jacksonville is 29th and receptions allowed to tight ends as well. So we're just getting a lot more bites at the apple than we would in a typical spot for a guy that's been hitting this number regularly on one of the lowest passing volume games in the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. And not only are we going to need the volume in terms of Josh Allen to be throwing it enough to get enough attempts to Kincaid, but like you said, he has been able to hit this previously, but you need those attempts to be efficient enough. And if you look at this Jaguars pass defense, like who they've gone up against from a quarterback perspective, it is not going to scare you whatsoever. I've got some of the guys like Cam Ward and Brandon Allen. It was mostly Brandon Allen last game out. Phillip Rivers before that. Bo Nix before that. Brady Cook before that. Riley Leonard before that. Cam Ward again before that. Jacoby Brissett before that. Like, I mean, where are the good quarterbacks? Nobody stands out like Josh Allen does. So you would expect Josh Allen would be the best quarterback that they would have faced. Some efficiency there. Longest over for Kincaid. I absolutely love it. Full agreement there with you, Rich. Prop number 2 you're looking at is the Monday night game where the Houston Texans are traveling outdoors on the road to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers in the cold weather. You're looking at Kenneth Gainwell from a rushing perspective, and you sent in 30.5, which is what the number was before the show started. There has been some agreement with you, so in a way that's positive. Somebody else likes this as well. You like Kenneth Gainwell to go under his rushing yards. The best number that we're seeing right now is 29.5 at multiple spots here. What do you like about, or what do you dislike about the situation that Gainwell is going to find himself in here on Monday night?
So he's been below 31 rushing yards in 11 of 16 games this year. He's single digit rushing attempts in every game but 3. And when you combine that with just where the matchup of this game lies, I believe that this, unless he really breaks a long one, which honestly we're going to get to some metrics here, so it suggests he is running against the low probability of doing so, that we're going to be under here. If this was receptions, we'd be in a different bag here. But Houston is excellent against the run in the regular season. They've allowed 3.7 yards per carry to running backs. That's second in the NFL. They have a 67% success rate against running back runs. It's also second in the NFL. 0.95 yards before contact on those runs. They've only allowed a run of 10 or more yards on 6% of running back runs, which is second. So when you combine his role in the matchup, he's going to really have to hit a long run, which again, the matchup suggests that he's running against low probability of doing so.
All right, now we've got another running back, different game. Kyren Williams of the Los Angeles Rams, the first game of the wild card weekend, travels to Charlotte to take on the Carolina Panthers. And in this one, we're looking at his rushing yardage over, which the market is actually, we got another yard of value here at a couple of the books. It's down to 64.5 at some spots. Others have 65.5. So once again, the value of having an odds jam screen, which you can get a free trial if you click the link below for 2 weeks. So basically for the next couple rounds of the postseason, if you want free trial over at odds jam, use the link below. 64.5 rushing yards. Rich, you think that Kyren Williams will exceed this in the opening game to start wild card weekend? What do you like about Kyren here?
Yeah, he's been below 65 rushing yards in just 4 games all season. And then we got some matchup stuff. Particularly, I just want to go back to the first matchup where Carolina had the ball for 35 minutes of clock. They had their most significant time of possession margin in any game this season. Just the amount of things that went right for them in that game being really tough to replicate themselves in this matchup. I mean, obviously they had 3 takeaways. They had their second most third down conversions in a game this season. They had 3 fourth down conversions. They were able to sustain drives, hit big plays, pull off this upset. I believe that this game is going to play out more. Even if the Rams don't cover, more towards the implied line in this game where they're 10-point favorites. And in that first game, Kyren Williams had an injured ankle, left the game in the first half. He only ran the ball 13 times, still had 72 rushing yards. What we like about him in this matchup is Kyren Williams is number 1 in the NFL in rate of man gap runs at 48% of his rushing attempts. Against man gap runs, Carolina is allowing 5.8 yards per carry, which is 30th in the NFL. They are allowing a first down or touchdown 35% of those carries, 2.9 yards before contact on those runs. That's 31st in the NFL. Also, if you like a lower number, which I know you do, Blake Corum ranks 3rd in those runs as well too. I think this is going to be a big game when you combine the matchup and this game playing out more in line with the implied game environment that's laid out on paper than the first matchup, that we're going to see the Rams backfield be hyperactive in this game.
Yeah, and even if by some chance the Carolina Panthers are able to keep this game close, which is a possibility, I still think that that's the best edge that the Rams have here is on the ground, running it consistently. As much as we think that Matt Stafford might be the MVP this season or Puka Nacua is elite, you involve everybody, but you don't go away from the run. At no point, I think, do you need to go away from the run in this matchup. So hopefully Kyren's able to get there, Blake Corum's able to get there, and the Rams are able to have some success on the ground. All right, well, that's 3 of Rich's favorite prop looks for the wild card weekend. He's obviously going to be back with us for the divisional round weekend, but I encourage you guys, if you're interested in playing some DFS or you want some additional prop ideas from Rich, take the subscription. It's $19.99 for the wild card weekend, and get involved in Rich's DFS articles that he's going to be posting very soon up on the website. He coaches you through some of the best stacks, some of the best tournament plays, some of the best core plays that you guys should incorporate into your lineups each week. A lot of great content there. Of course, his game previews as well, which is kind of the crown jewel of Rich's work and stuff that everybody in the industry tends to read and cite and analyze. So excellent stuff as always, Rich. We look forward to seeing you in the divisional round, and good luck.
Good luck, everyone.
Now joining me is our NFL referee expert, Joe Gibbs. As a reminder, you can find all of Joe's outstanding analysis, his weekly article on the referee crews, their assignments, some of their trends and tendencies, and how he thinks it might influence this week's games over at sharpfootballanalysis.com. But we're fortunate enough to welcome Joe in each week to this podcast to give us some expert information and analysis. Of course, it's wild card round. That means the lights are brighter. The focus on the officials is going to be even stronger, Joe, and we'll see what ends up happening this weekend. 6 games to decide who moves on to the divisional round. We're going to first talk about the Saturday night game between the Green Bay Packers and the Chicago Bears. This game is being played in Chicago. The referee is Adrian Hill, and if we look at the odds screen right now, this line has been bouncing back and forth and back and forth. Packers currently are favored by between 1 to 1.5 points. So the Bears are catching 1 to 1.5 points. Total sits between 44.5 and 45.5, with some spots even dead on at 45. So this one's been moving around. There's been some opinions on both sides of it to get the game to ping pong back and forth, times with the Bears being favored, at times with the Packers being favored. What does your research show that the influence of Adrian Hill is going to have on the outcome of this game?
Okay, so straight off the bat, it's an Adrian Hill-led crew, but he is the only member of his regular season crew participating in the game. There's actually 3 John Hussey crew members, which are they're the dominant force in the actual crew makeup, but Hill runs the show. It's his crew. Adrian Hill this season, an NFL best 10-4 to the under in career divisional games. Adrian Hill, 19-11-1 to the under, 64%. So straight off the bat, you have a strong lean towards the under. There's some weather issues, which we'll get to later on. But you look at the familiarity of these teams, divisional opponents, 3rd game this season. You have a Hill crew that is predisposed for these games to go under, and the weather. From a total perspective, that's probably the way I would look, although the number has dropped from what it opened at. As far as points of emphasis, Hill's crew ranked number 1 for offensive holding penalties this season. That offensive holding false start combination accounted for an above average 43% of their penalties called. And I mentioned the Hussey crew, who has quite a big presence in the game. They actually called 43.5% of their penalties via offensive holding and false start. So those 2 penalty categories right there loom large. The other part I would mention would be this game, based on what we've seen so far this season, could be very chippy. And those 3 Hussey crew members on the game, that crew's predisposed to calling those discipline-related penalties at a much higher rate than other crews over the years. So, you're unsportsmanlike conduct and you're taunting penalties, to a lesser extent, unnecessary roughness. But keep an eye on that Saturday night as well. The game here itself, this is the Bears' 3rd game with Adrian Hill this season. First one, a win at the Raiders. Second one, a home victory versus the Giants. And I noted that game, that was Chicago's best performance this season from a penalty perspective, just 3 penalties in that second game with Adrian Hill. So if they can somehow manage something similar to that Saturday night, it will go a long way in a game that, like I said, that offensive line, the focus along that, if they can manage just 3 penalties, that would be a big advantage. The game itself, look, it's going to be very windy there, apparently. I think that favors, to some degree, Chicago. Green Bay, it's wild card weekend. They're the biggest wild card team to me of all the teams participating. We haven't really seen them play a meaningful game for a month, which was at Soldier Field against the Chicago Bears back in December. So I'm not sure what we're going to get from them. Now, they could come out, guns a-blazing and look great, but that's a big if. So, I lean towards Chicago. Ben Johnson wants to run the ball. The win will negate some of the Green Bay passing plays downfield and potentially limit the exposure of the Bears secondary. So, from a side perspective, I do lean the Bears in the rubber match of this series for 2025.
So the 2-0 win rate for the Chicago Bears with Adrian Hill, was there any funny business, anything going on with those games in terms of disparity of penalties one way or another, or the Chicago Bears just ended up, winning those games in a manner that they normally do?
The first game versus the Raiders, it was pretty balanced and both teams were penalized heavily. The second game in Chicago against the Giants, yes, there was a stat in that. So maybe that's just a random thing. Maybe Chicago learned something from the first game, applied that in the second. I can only go on what the numbers show, but it was their least penalized game of the season. So whereas the Green Bay Packers haven't had a game with Adrian Hill since 2022. So we're going over 3 years since their last exposure to his crew.
All right, well, this one will be fascinating. Obviously, the next one that you've got for us is the very next game on the docket. It's the first game on Sunday, the 1 p.m. Eastern time kickoff with the Buffalo Bills taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. If we look at the odds screen, once again, we have a road team laying 1 to 1.5 points, and the home team, the Jacksonville Jaguars, catching 1 to 1.5 points, depending upon where you shop. Total much higher here, 51.5 at most spots. But the Buffalo Bills, the small road favorite. And this one is Brad Allen. And I've seen some people come into some of the comments that of tweets on mine on X, completely unrelated to this particular game, worried about Brad Allen already. So some people, I'll just tell you, the pulse, the crowd is not really pro Brad Allen to begin with. What does Brad Allen bring to the table in this game, Joe?
Yeah, I got to be honest. I was kind of surprised when I saw him be assigned a game because he's been involved in a couple of controversial games just recently. Last week, Tampa Bay, Carolina, and then the Rams Seahawks game a few weeks ago. So the fact he got a game was a surprise. I don't know how they come up with these assignments, but he's there. It's Brad Allen. He has 2 of his regular crew members there with him and a couple of crew members from the Scott Novak, Clay Martin crews. But at the end of the day, it's Allen's crew. Very good home field referee, dating back the last decade. Home teams have a 61% win rate with him. That's third best in the league over that period of time. Home teams in the playoffs, 6 games Allen has officiated. Home teams are 5-1 in those 6 games. He's calling the fewest penalties per game in 2025. The Jags are the 3rd most penalized team in the NFL. So if form holds, he may provide a little leeway for a Jacksonville team that has been penalized at an above average rate. Offensive holding. The Bills co-ranked number 1 for offensive holding with the Tennessee Titans this season. Brad Allen's crew ranked 15th of 17 calling offensive holding penalties. So Buffalo may catch a break with Brad on that front. Buffalo has actually a very good record with Brad Allen in the Josh Allen era, including 3 playoff wins, but they were all at home in Buffalo. So this is their first time on the road with him as a referee. The other part, Allen has called the fewest or awarded the fewest automatic first downs by a penalty. The Jaguars are a top 5 beneficiary of defensive pass interference. The Buffalo Bills defense ranks last surrendering defensive pass interference. And like I said, Brad Allen's crew this season has not awarded that many automatic first downs via penalty, including ranking 15th of 17th, awarding defensive pass interference. So it'll be interesting to see how they call it. As far as the game itself, I was surprised when Jacksonville opened the underdog. They're, to me, the much more well-rounded team, and I think they have better players. My concern with Jacksonville will be this, and we see this in all sports. You see these teams that excel during the regular season, but they're playing at their peak to get to that point. Do they have another level to go up in these playoff games where the intensity ramps up? Can they ramp up with it? So that would be my concern with Jacksonville. Buffalo, look, they're too Josh Allen dependent. Having said that, he can put him on his back and get him over the line here. I'll ride with Jacksonville in this one, catching points at home with a good home field referee under the expectation that, yes, they can rise to the occasion in this one. Nothing would surprise me. Nothing would surprise me with any of the games this weekend, but I do lean Jacksonville in this game.
This game obviously is going to be viewed by many as Josh Allen's need to win game because of the storylines. No Patrick Mahomes to get through in the AFC, no Joe Burrow to get through in the AFC. These are quarterbacks who have knocked him out in the past. He's got the free road, no Lamar Jackson to have to deal with either. You look at the quarterbacks that are in the AFC at this point in the season, and Josh Allen, clearly from a talent perspective and how he's viewed, the best quarterback of the bunch. If this game is tight late, and if Josh Allen needs to put a little bit more on his shoulders, and then maybe Trevor Lawrence is in a similar situation in a back and forth tight affair, which certainly the point spread seems to indicate. These quarterbacks are like dropping back a little bit more frequently, taking some hits in the pocket, or getting out to run the football and taking some hits down the field. Is this crew or Brad Allen himself predisposed to calling a little bit more of those to protect the quarterbacks that might be in the pocket or that might be running down the field? Or does he call a lower rate of some of those roughing the passer or unnecessary roughness type penalties and let the game sort of play itself out?
They've been calling a lower rate of penalties this season. So, and like I said, they've called the fewest penalties overall. So if form holds, they should keep away from all that stuff, the extracurricular stuff. Having said that, there are, like I said, there's 4 other members from different crews, and their instincts perhaps are to throw the flag that Allen may not necessarily. That's the problem with these games for me, is I have to go on what the head referee is, but it's not regular crew. So you get these outside influences that, yes, even though Allen himself didn't call a lot of those this year, you get somebody from a crew who throws the flag instinctively. That changes the dynamic. So it's one of those things we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, especially if he's out of the pocket or a little bit down the field and there's a hit close to the sideline. That is like a typical, like a go-to move by Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes as well. Like they'll run close to the sideline, step out at the last moment, try to draw that hit, overreact, a little bit of action. Never hurt anybody, literally, but they'll try to draw a flag off of that at times. And so it depends which crew member is closest and what their predisposition is to throwing those penalties. Let me ask you this last question about that setup of the head referee with a different crew. Does this new regrouping and reshuffling of crews go through the postseason, or will they continue in the divisional round to have, I guess Brad Allen won't get one of these games, but the next ref, will he be working with anybody who would call this game, or will they now be on a crew that then progresses through the postseason and maybe call a AFC championship game or something to that extent?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer. There's no rhyme or reason to how they do this, but all the crews are mixed. There's never going to be one, continuous crew to what we're seeing. So they mix them all. They mix and match them. The crews we see this weekend, we won't see again in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We just won't. So it's just a guessing game, really. And I do my best to put it together, but it's you're playing it on the fly.
Right. Okay. Well, great stuff as usual, Joe. We look forward to hearing more from you in that divisional round. We'll see how this wild card weekend ends up going, and we'll talk to you again next Friday. Good luck.
Great. Thanks, Warren. Good luck.
The playoffs start Saturday, and I know a lot of you are already getting your picks in for Wild Card Weekend. If you want to add something fun on top of that, Splash Sports has an NFL Playoff Survivor contest that's really simple to play, and it gives you a shot at winning $1 million guaranteed. You need to make 2 picks Wild Card Weekend, 2 in the divisional round, and then 1 each the rest of the way. You can enter from your phone in 40-plus states. If you're excited for the playoffs, this is worth checking out. $150 to enter, $1 million in guaranteed prizes. Make sure you enter before 4:30 p.m. on Saturday. All right, we have heard some great insight from a lot of our experts, but now it's my turn. It's my turn to give you the Novig value of the week. The hard part about the postseason, as it turns out, is that these odds makers are lining a lot of these props on Monday. And I was a little surprised to see almost every single key player lined to the totality of his markets on Monday. And I went through the matchups and identified the player and the prop that I thought was my favorite of the week. And I just couldn't wait to get it out to subscribers. So as a result, I'm going to have to tell you what it is, but it's not going to count to the record, win or lose, because I can't give it to you at the same line that we gave it out 24 to 36 hours ago, depending upon when you're listening to this. I'm still going to share what I gave, and I'm still going to give you some insight, but it's not going to be counting towards the record. Let's go to the screen right now. And I like Josh Allen pass attempts over. Now, I got this at 30.5. As you can see, it has moved to 32.5, 33.5 at some spots. That's going up a lot compared to what he previously was at. So Here's the issue. The reason I like this bet, let me just talk about that first and foremost, is that Josh Allen, I found this very difficult to believe. He has played in 12 playoff games since 2020. And the only places that he's played has been Buffalo or Kansas City. He's never played anywhere else. And every single time he's left Buffalo, he's lost. Now, granted, it was in Kansas City. Kansas City is a tough place to play. Kansas City is a tough team to beat on the road. But he has not won a single playoff game outside of Buffalo since 2020. And so now he's going on the road to Jacksonville. He's never played there recently. The last time he went down there, they lost. The time after that, he played the Jacksonville Jaguars over in London. He lost. Now, he did beat them last year in a blowout, but that was up in Buffalo. And this Jaguars team is a lot different than they were last year from a coaching perspective and mentality perspective and all of that. Josh Allen, I think this is going to become a passing type game for Josh Allen. It's not what they want. They're going to come into this game trying to run the football. They're going to come into this game trying to establish the run with Cook. They don't want Josh Allen dropping back a lot to throw the football. But here is the problem. There's two main issues with that approach. The projected game state at some point in time, in my opinion, and the strength of opposing defense. The Jacksonville Jaguars are a pass funnel defense. They are very difficult to run the football on, which is why every single team, even with quarterbacks far, far, far worse than Josh Allen, has decided to pass the football more frequently. Look at the list of quarterbacks and tell me if you were the coach of that team would want this quarterback throwing the football as much as he did. Brandon Allen had 31 dropbacks last week, week 18. Cam Ward added 4 more. That's 35 total dropbacks. Phillip Rivers, an old man, 40 years old, plus 40 years old, off the couch, had to throw the football 32 dropbacks against this defense of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Bo Nix, 49 dropbacks, 49 dropbacks. Brady Cook, 41 dropbacks. Riley Leonard had 31 after filling in from Daniel Jones, who had 8 himself, so 39 from them. The week before that, Cam Ward, I'm working in reverse chronological order here, 58 from Jacoby Brissett. I mean, I'll go back a couple more. 49 from Davis Mills, 43 from Geno Smith. The point is, teams throw the football more than they run it against the Jaguars, in part because this run defense is very good. The other part is that they end up trailing on the scoreboard. And that's my issue with the Buffalo Bills here. I think they're going to come out into this game and try to run the football a little bit. They may not have a ton of success in trying that approach. The Jacksonville Jaguars, however, come out very aggressively. I've got some statistics here that helped me come to this prop that I like. On the season, the Jaguars ranked number 3 in early down pass rate in the first half of games. But since week 14, that's increased to number 1. They're the highest pass rate team in the NFL, and they operate at an above average pace. They want to jump out and put up points on you early on in games. That then forces the opponent to play from behind, abandon their run a little bit, and throw the football more. And because the Buffalo Bills are the exact opposite approach, the Buffalo Bills are the 27th ranked pass rate team. They are a low scoring team in the first half. In fact, if you look at the actual points per game from over the course of the entire season, they average 10.1 first half points per game, which is 17th. They're averaging only 7.9 points per game from week 10 onwards. That's 27th in the league. Jacksonville Jaguars are one of the highest scoring first half teams in the NFL. They're averaging 17 points from week 10 on. That's number 2 in the NFL. They're averaging 20 points from week 14 on. No, they haven't played some of the best defenses. But the Buffalo Bills, I just read off that list of quarterbacks. They haven't played very good offenses or very good quarterbacks themselves. So if the Buffalo Bills, this is a very much a game state type play, but if the Buffalo Bills, I'm betting his over on passing attempts, not because I think that he's going to come out throwing the football from the first snap of this game till the end of the game. It's because I think that they're going to try to run, not have as much success. Maybe Jacksonville has success early. Buffalo, playing from weakness in a must-win game, decides to let our best quarterback throw the football more and drop back to pass more, like pretty much most teams do against the Jacksonville Jaguars. If I'm wrong on that thesis, then this pick will also be wrong. but this is the angle that I like to attack here. And this market has now been ruined by me. You can't bet over 33.5. That being said, I did ladder Josh Allen. I mean, I did take some ladders if you're not going to get the same value. But if you're asking, like, do I think Josh Allen will throw the ball 34, 35 times? Yes, I think that there's a good chance that he will. A better chance than the odds were suggesting, which is why I bet him at 34 plus, 35 plus, 38 plus, and 40 plus pass attempts. If you look at his games when he lost, he threw 34 attempts, 37 attempts, and 48 attempts in those 3 playoff losses. All of them were on the road. I'm talking about the ones that were in Kansas City. That was his attempts that he threw in those games. In 4 of his 12 games, the Bills won at home by 14 plus points. And even in those games, he still was averaging 30 pass attempts per game. Get rid of those games. The other 8 games, he's averaging 37 pass attempts per game, well over this current number. So this is why I decided to ladder it a little bit, because I do think they'll eventually get there. But this year's version of the Bills does not want to throw the ball much. They want to run the ball a lot. And it's going to be interesting to see if this one hits. So that was my favorite look of the week. My advice to you now, that you can't get this market specifically, would be to look at some Buffalo Bills receivers off of that market, like Rich's best bet on Dalton Kincaid's longest reception, like some of the other players on the Buffalo Bills passing attack, where the overall numbers are depressed a little bit, thinking that this is a run-first team that's just going to run the football in Jacksonville in this playoff game, like they've done for like 8 weeks or so. And if that doesn't end up being the case, and the Bills do get forced into passing the football, not only will Josh Allen go over his attempts number and maybe hit some of the ladders, but these receivers will also go over their receiving yards numbers. You have to pick and choose maybe which ones you think have the best situation, but they will be carried with Josh Allen, with the rising tide raising all ships analogy. So we will see if it ends up paying off. But if you get Josh Allen wrong, or let's pretend the Jacksonville Jaguars have a lead, don't have a lead, maybe Trevor Lawrence is the one who turtles up and plays terribly. And if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play well, Josh Allen might only need to have 25 pass attempts. They run James Cook. His passing attempts goes under, the receivers go under, and everything goes sideways. Definitely a possibility. This is very much a game state bet. It's the way I'm going for this one. So if you want to try to get the best bet, I don't know what's going to happen next week. Once again, I don't know what time there's going to be a bet that I identify that I feel like I need to move on before the rest of the market takes it. And so if I can hold it till this show, I'm definitely going to do that. That's my goal and my objective. I want to try to increase the best bets record on this show. I can't promise that that's going to happen. Stay tuned. If you want to get involved and you don't want to have to worry about whether or not I'm going to release it, you obviously want to get on board with the betting package, because you're never going to miss it if you are on board with the betting package over at sharpfootballanalysis.com. And in addition, there's a lot of other props that we're going to be releasing between now and the start of the games. It's going to be a great weekend. Hopefully we have success. Hopefully you have success. Hopefully you learned something from the show in each of the games that we broke down that you can take from it. Take advantage of some of Rich's props that he put out there, specifically Dalton Kincaid longest reception lines up very nicely with the Josh Allen pass attempts prop. Good luck, everybody. We'll see you before divisional weekend.
Go,